Question number 2, Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tertiary Education, Skills and Employment. Does the most recent National Employment Indicator show that there are more or fewer jobs now than when his government came into office in 2008?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, the National Employment Indicator indicates there were 12,000 fewer jobs in February 2012 than there was in December 2008. I would point out to the member, though, that the NEI is an experimental series and it does have a number of shortcomings, including the fact that it ignores self-employed workers from the results. A better measure of the number of people in jobs is the Household Labour Force Survey, which was released just this morning. That showed an increase of 36,000 jobs compared to the September 2008 quarter. If you consider the impact of the global financial crisis and Canterbury earthquakes, this is actually a very considerable achievement and reinforces the government's aim of creating the right environment for competitive businesses to establish and grow, creating more jobs and higher wages.
William Sewell.
Supplementary. Is he aware that there are 55,000 more unemployed since his government took office, when the Prime Minister promised to do something about it? 55,000. When the Prime Minister promised to do something about it, unquote, and given the unemployment now is the highest in 18 months, when can the New Zealand public expect this to see the so-called brighter future?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, well, in fact, the number of people who are obtaining an unemployment benefit has actually been reducing over the last 12 months, and in fact, the number of young people on an unemployment benefit has now dropped to around 15,000. So that is good progress. But I think the member omits in his question the context of the challenges that the government has been facing economically. Of course, we've had the Canterbury earthquakes, which have been very damaging to Canterbury. Well, people in Canterbury are still concerned about them. And also we've had the global financial crisis. And the interesting thing about the global financial crisis, Mr Speaker, is it's hit most countries considerably harder than it's hit New Zealand.
So, William Sewell.
Is he aware that the number of unemployed has gone up by 9,000 in the last 3 months alone? And when will his government admit that its failed policies of merging departments, selling assets and clamping down on beneficiaries is not creating growth nor employment?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, the HLFS shows that the number of jobs in the New Zealand economy has gone up 9,000 in the last 3 months. That's correct, and Winston, you should read the bit of paper. It's gone up 9,000 in the last 3 months. But the number of people available for work has also increased by 18,000, which has given us the highest labour force participation rate since late 2008, which is very encouraging. Mr Speaker, the member needs to look across the seas and look at what's happening in the rest of the world, where we have massive unemployment. The current Euro-level unemployment rate is now nearly 11%, and across the whole of the EU it's 10%, so New Zealand's unemployment rate is actually pretty reasonable by comparison.
Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary to the Minister. Given today's announcement that the number of young people not in training, education or employment has increased to 87,000, will he review his government's policy to cut youth transition services for anyone over the age of 17?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, I don't think the member's assertion is remotely correct in the second half of her question, but I would point out there's some interesting numbers within those NEET figures. The encouraging part of the NEET figures is that the 15 to 19-year-olds that are NEET has dropped down to 8.9%, and I think that is very, very encouraging from the point of view of everybody who is working at, from nearly 10%, Mr Mallard. The 20 to 24s has gone up, and I've checked that with the Department of Labour and the Department of Statistics, and they said that's flown through from the previous numbers for 15 to 19. So what that shows is that our policies are having some good impacts on the 15 to 19-year-olds, but the high levels we inherited prior to that are still moving through the system.
Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary to the Minister. Does he and the government now acknowledge that his job growth predictions are wrong? His predictions that unemployment would decrease are wrong? His assumption in the welfare reforms that Kiwis don't want to work has been proven wrong, and when will he apologise to the people of New Zealand for the reduction in the number of jobs and opportunities available to them?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, the member is wrong. The reality is the number of jobs in the New Zealand economy has lifted by 9,000 in the last quarter and is actually now the highest, this is according to the HLFS, the highest number of jobs this country has ever had. Now, we also have an unusually high participation rate, and that has resulted in a lift in the measured unemployment rate. But actually there has been some good success. There's always more to do, Mr Speaker, but I would note in regard to the member's concern about NEETs that actually during the last 5 years of the Labour government, when unemployment was lower because of the stronger world economy, the NEET figure never went far below 10 or 12%.
Question number 3, the Honourable Tau Hanarei. Question number 3, the Honourable Tau Hanarei.
I was just waiting for the House to calm down.